Right. The History of Sham Ennessim by Danielle LaCroix. So Sham Ennessim is a holiday that is celebrated in Egypt. Egypt is located in Africa, so on the northern east corner of it, and it is surrounded by Libya, Sudan, and Saudi Arabia across the Red Sea. Some light background information on Egypt would be the fact that ancient times were from around 3100 to 332 BCE, and it was back when the ancient Egyptians still worshipped the pagan gods. The Christian influence didn't come over until about the 1st century CE, and then Christianity became the dominant religion. Alexandria actually became one of the main capitals for Christianity, spreading throughout Africa. And that remained the dominant religion until about 641 CE during the Arab-Muslim conquest. And that's when Islam then became the dominant religion, where it still remains today. Now, the climate in Egypt is primarily dry and tropical. And in the northern coastal region, they have the heat and the drought in the summer, and then they have moderate to light rain in the winter. You can see that on that bottom graph. In the green where you see Alexandria, which is a coastal city, you can see that rain in that green. Otherwise, it's pretty much dry, and the climate for the most part stays the same throughout all of the country. Now, the origins of Sham Ennessim actually trace back to the Pharaohic era of ancient Egypt. So that was around 2700 to 2575 BC. It was originally linked to the agricultural calendar, or the ancient Egyptian calendar, also known as solar lunar calendar. They all correlate the same way. And it was actually a springtime festival known as Shamu, which is one of the 3 seasons that the ancient Egyptian calendar had. And it marked the start of their growing season. So what is Shamu? So ancient Egyptians believed that this was the time of the year where the gods would essentially renew the earth. Shamu itself signifies low water or harvest or summer. It has different translations depending on where you look. And essentially, it was when the Nile River was at its lowest. So this would occur around midsummer, so May to September time frame. And as I said before, it was a time when the ancient Egyptians believed that the gods renewed the earth. So the citizens would offer salted fish and other foods, which we will delve into later, to these deities, in essence to thank them for a good harvest. Now, the transition from it being the Egyptian festival of Shimu to Sham Ennessim is a little bit interesting. So Shimu is where they would honor the gods. It was an agricultural sort of festival. But then with the acceptance of Christianity mixed with that Arabic influence, it shifted from a solar calendar to a Coptic Christian calendar. And then due to that Arabic influence, Sham Ennessim was created. So Sham Ennessim in Arabic translates to smelling the breeze or inhaling the zephyr. So it has a same context to that Shamu had. And it reflects basically spending a lot of time outdoors in the fresh spring, basically enjoying all of life has to offer, just enjoying the springtime. And it's a national non-religious holiday. So before, when it was just Egyptians who celebrated it, now due to the Christian and Arabic influence, it's a non-religious holiday. And since it now follows the Coptic Christian Easter, but it still commemorates the arrival of spring or the harvest season. So how is it celebrated? So it's celebrated a lot by families picnicking outdoors, just spending time with each other. They would eat traditional foods such as fasik, onions, or lettuce. And the food represents fertility, renewal, and that new life of spring. So the first food that's believed to be the oldest surviving traditional Egyptian food is fasik. It is a salted, fermented mullet fish that's been prepared and eaten during this holiday for centuries. And despite its pungent smell and very acquired taste, people still eat it to this day. However, there are several cases every single year of food poisoning. Thus, if this is something you want to try, I highly suggest finding a right vendor for it. But it's an aged and heavily salted fish, so a lot of times people cannot stomach it. So it turns out a lot of people actually will substitute it with grape leaves, which is another Mediterranean food. So here's two images of fasik. You can see kind of how it's prepared. They'll pair it with the onions and some lettuce. That way it's kind of eaten all together. For the lettuce and onions, these vegetables are symbolic of life and renewal, as they do grow abundantly during the spring season. Lettuce is a symbol of growth and prosperity, and it's typically eaten fresh during the holiday. Green onions, on the other hand, represent still growth, but they represent fertility, and they're eaten raw, very often with that very dry physique that we spoke about earlier, and they're believed to bring good health and prosperity for the coming year. So on the left-hand side, you can see an image. This would be, for instance, a vendor out in Egypt selling those green onions and lettuce to local passerbys on the street. And on the right-hand side, you can see the lettuce and the onions being paired with that fasik with some naan bread. Another food that is very common for Egyptians and everybody alike out in Egypt to snack on is actually lupin. They are beans. They're commonly referred to as termes. It's an Egyptian snack. How the process works for preparing these is they would soak these beans overnight, and then they would rinse them off, and they would put them in fresh water in the next morning, and they would top them off with salt and lemon juice, and they're essentially almost like popcorn. So they would kind of peel off the outside layer and just snack on them like that throughout the day. So on the right-hand side, you can see them just sitting in that fresh water, and then that's when they would scoop them out and put them into little bags or cups, as you can see on the left-hand image. And then they aren't just topped with just that salt and lemon juice. They can also be topped with like chili flakes or like powders and stuff like that. So you can season them however you'd like to. So they are essentially Egyptians' version of popcorn. Now, another food, technically, that isn't necessarily eaten all the time are colored boiled eggs. And like many spring festivals around the world, eggs symbolize fertility and rebirth. Traditionally, Egyptians would boil and decorate them, and they would be used as a decoration around their houses. And sometimes even people would write wishes on the eggs in hopes that the gods would fulfill them overnight. However, they also can be baked into brioche-like sweet braided bread, which I will show you on the next slide. But it is used primarily as a decoration. In this picture, you can see these very intricate designs. So these would be more so the ones that would be more on display as a decoration. And on the right-hand side, you can see them baked into that sweet bread. Those would be more the ones that you would be eating. And on the left-hand side, you can see that these ones aren't as intricate as the ones that we saw in the prior picture. That is due to this being something that parents will do with their children. So they would gather around and they would paint these eggs. That way it's more of a family-oriented task or activity that they can do together.